You think money can buy everything, Damien? Even me? I'm offering you the world, Chloe. What's a night in my bed compared to that? I'm not for sale. But what happens when the billionaire asks for something more? Stay with me. You won't want to miss how this ends. Chloe thought she had control, but what she didn't know was that her purity would become a price tag, something much more dangerous than her body. What would you do in Chloe's shoes? Drop a comment below and let me know where you're watching from. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell for more suspense and drama. This is just the beginning. Chloe had never felt so out of place. The grand chandeliers above her flickered like stars, casting long shadows across the polished marble floor. The hum of the crowd in the ballroom faded as she locked eyes with him across the room. Damien Hawk, the billionaire everyone talked about but no one dared to approach. She wasn't supposed to be here, not in this world of excess and power. Yet, here she was, clutching a glass of champagne that felt more like a prop than a drink. The room was filled with laughter, glinting jewelry, and soft murmurs, but all Chloe could hear was the thumping of her own heart as it raced. Damien moved through the crowd effortlessly, his presence commanding the room without a word. He was tall, sharp-featured, the kind of man whose charisma could make you forget what you were doing, or why you were even there. And now, he was looking at her. He smiled, and there it was, the smile of a man who knew exactly what he wanted. Slowly, he made his way toward her, each step deliberate, like he was measuring her very soul. When he finally reached her side, his eyes never left hers. The air between them seemed to crackle. "You must be Chloe Bennet," he said, his voice smooth as silk, but laced with an authority that made it impossible to ignore. Chloe stood frozen for a moment, the drink in her hand suddenly feeling like a weight. I am," she replied, her voice catching slightly. "I've heard so much about you," he continued, his smile widening just a little, as though he were savoring the moment. "Your art is truly captivating. But you, my dear, are something much more intriguing." Chloe's brow furrowed slightly, unsure of where this conversation was headed. Was this just another conversation with a wealthy man who admired her work from afar? Or was it something else entirely? He didn't give her much time to think. "I'm offering you something many would beg for, Chloe. A night with me. I can make you rich, give you everything you've ever dreamed of. All you have to do is accept." Her breath caught in her throat. "What are you asking?" she managed to whisper. Damien stepped closer, his gaze intense, assessing. "A night. One night. In my world. And in return, I'll offer you a sum that will change your life." Chloe felt the words settle in her chest, heavy like a stone. This was no ordinary offer. She could see the cold calculation in his eyes, the way he was sizing her up, weighing the cost of her soul like a transaction. She wanted to say no, to turn around and walk out of this gilded prison, back into the safety of her modest apartment and her struggling career. But there was something in his gaze, a pull she couldn't explain, that kept her rooted to the spot. "You think money can buy everything, Damien?" she said, her voice trembling, but she held his stare. His lips curled into a half-smile, a look of both amusement and something darker. "Not everything. But it can buy you a new life, Chloe. A life beyond the struggles, beyond the limits of what you know. You'll be free." The words hung in the air between them, thick with promise and danger. Chloe could feel her pulse racing, the decision pressing down on her chest like a weight she couldn't lift. Damien's gaze softened, and for a moment, he almost looked human. "I'm not just offering you money, Chloe. I'm offering you something deeper, something you can't get from anyone else." But Chloe, still stunned, wasn't sure if she could trust him. Was this some twisted game? Or was it truly an opportunity? The tension in the air was suffocating. She opened her mouth to speak, but the words caught in her throat. Damien took another step closer, his presence overwhelming. "You'll think about it," he said softly, almost as though he were reading her thoughts. "I'll be here, waiting, whenever you're ready." With that, he turned and walked away, leaving her standing there, the weight of his words lingering in the air like a dark cloud. Chloe stood motionless for a moment, her mind racing. What had just happened? She didn't know what to make of it. She hadn't expected this, had no idea this would be where the night would take her. And yet, there it was. An offer she couldn't refuse, or perhaps one she didn't want to. Damien's figure receded into the crowd, leaving Chloe standing alone, her heart pounding. Caught between two worlds, one that promised everything, and another that demanded everything in return. But what would she do next? Would she take the offer, or walk away from the billionaire's dangerous game? The answer wasn't clear yet, but Chloe knew one thing. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Chloe didn't sleep that night. The city outside her window buzzed with life, but inside her apartment, the silence was suffocating. Her mind couldn't escape the memory of Damien's words, the weight of his offer pressing down on her chest. She turned over in bed for the 100th time, staring at the ceiling, feeling the cold sheets beneath her, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something was shifting inside her. She had spent years fighting for her independence, for her art, but what Damien offered wasn't just money. It was power. It was freedom. For the first time in her life, the possibility of a future beyond struggle, beyond rejection, beyond obscurity, was within reach. She could feel the temptation rising inside her like a tide. A night. One night, and her entire life could change. No more scraping by, no more gallery showings that no one came to, no more working double shifts just to pay rent. Damien promised everything: luxury, fame, security. But at what cost? Chloe reached over to her nightstand, grabbing the half-empty glass of water she had left earlier. She took a sip, but it did nothing to quell the storm inside her. She had been offered money before, even small fortunes from investors who claimed they saw potential in her work, but she had always turned them down. This time, it was different. This wasn't just about money. It was about her soul. And Damien Hawk? He wasn't offering her money for her art. He was offering her something much more personal, something she wasn't sure she could ever get back. She rose from the bed and walked over to the window, looking out at the city that seemed so far away now. The skyline shimmered in the distance, like a land of dreams and nightmares. Her phone buzzed on the table. The name that flashed on the screen made her stomach churn. Aiden Hayes. He had been her best friend since childhood, always there to pull her out of trouble, always her rock. She needed to talk to him, needed to hear the voice of reason. But part of her already knew what he'd say. He'd tell her to run, to forget about Damien, to never even consider the offer. Chloe hesitated, her fingers hovering over the screen, before answering. "Chloe?" Aiden's voice came through, rough but warm, like the sound of a safe harbor in a storm. "What happened? You didn't call after the gala. I've been worried sick." She sighed, sitting back down on the couch. "It's complicated." "What is? That guy, Damien? What did he say to you?" Aiden's voice cracked with concern. "Listen, Chloe. I don't know him, but I've heard the rumors. He's dangerous. Stay away from him." She ran her hand through her hair, trying to gather her thoughts. She wanted to explain, wanted him to understand. "It's not just about him, Aiden. He's offering me something that I've never had before. Security. A future. For one night, I could change everything." There was a long pause on the other end of the line before Aiden spoke again, his tone serious but gentle. "Chloe, I know how much you've struggled, how hard you've worked. But you can't let someone like him use you. He's a predator, and I'm telling you right now, you're worth more than whatever he's offering." Her chest tightened. She knew Aiden was right. She had always prided herself on her independence, on the belief that she could make it on her own terms. But there was something in Damien's eyes, something in his voice that made her wonder if maybe she wasn't enough. "I know," Chloe whispered, her voice trembling. "But what if I'm not strong enough to keep fighting? What if I'm just tired of being invisible?" Aiden's voice softened, the worry in his words palpable. "You're not invisible, Chloe. You never were. But you have to do this for yourself, not for someone like him. Don't let him make you feel small. You're better than that." Chloe didn't respond immediately. She felt the weight of Aiden's words settling in, but her own thoughts were a whirlwind. Could she really turn down an opportunity like this? Could she stand on her own, without the comfort of Damien's promise? She wasn't sure anymore. "Just think it through, okay?" Aiden said. "Take a breath, take your time. Don't make any decisions you can't undo." Chloe put the phone down, her mind spinning. She walked over to the window again, staring out at the lights twinkling in the distance. The city felt so close, and yet she was so far away from it. What if she didn't take this chance? What if she stayed in the same place she had always been, fighting for the scraps, struggling to make ends meet? But was the cost of freedom worth losing herself? The clock on the wall ticked loudly in the silence of the apartment. It felt like time was running out. She glanced at her phone again. The text from Damien was still there. He was waiting for her reply. One night. Think about it. She closed her eyes. One night. One decision. Her whole life could change. But was she ready to pay the price? Chloe stood there, torn between the pull of Damien's world and the comfort of everything she had known. She glanced back at the phone, her fingers trembling as she stared at the screen, the cursor blinking. Should she respond? Or should she walk away from it all? In that moment, Chloe knew one thing. Whatever choice she made, there would be no turning back. The morning light filtered through the blinds, casting soft shadows across the cluttered room. Chloe sat at the kitchen table, nursing a cup of lukewarm coffee, her mind still lost in the storm of her thoughts. It had been hours since she last spoke to Aiden, and yet his words echoed in her ears. Don't make any decisions you can't undo. But it was too late. She had already made the decision, and now there was no going back. Her phone buzzed, breaking the silence. She glanced at the screen, her heart skipping a beat. It was from Damien. I trust you've had time to think. I'm looking forward to hearing your answer. You know where to find me. The message was simple, clean, uncomplicated, in a way that made it more terrifying than any threat. Chloe's fingers hovered over the screen. For a moment, she thought about ignoring it, throwing the phone in a drawer and pretending none of it had ever happened. But deep down, she knew that wasn't an option. Damien had made it clear that he wasn't going to leave her alone until she made a choice. The weight of it pressed down on her chest again. She had never been one to take shortcuts, never been the type to let someone else dictate her life. But here she was, on the verge of making the most dangerous decision of her life. One night. Think about it. The words haunted her. A knock at the door made her jump, the sound like a clap of thunder in the otherwise silent apartment. Her pulse quickened. She wasn't expecting anyone. Hesitant, she stood up, wiping her palms on her jeans before walking toward the door. When she opened it, Aiden stood there, looking worried, but with a sense of determination she hadn't seen in him before. His eyes softened as he saw her standing there, clearly unsure of herself. Chloe, we need to talk. His voice was firm, but there was something more to it. He wasn't here just as her best friend. He was here as her protector, the guy who'd been there for her when no one else had. Come in, she muttered, stepping aside to let him in. Her mind was still tangled in knots, but seeing Aiden somehow made her feel like she could breathe again. They both sat down on the couch. Chloe kept her hands in her lap, twisting the fabric of her jeans. She felt 1,000,000 miles away from the world outside, even though it was right there beyond the window. Aiden wasted no time. I know you've already decided, he said, looking her in the eye. But I need you to hear me out. Please. Chloe nodded, her throat tight. She couldn't even find the words to explain what was happening inside her. She hadn't even admitted to herself how far she had fallen into this mess. Chloe, I've seen you fight for everything. You've worked your ass off to get where you are. You don't need him. Not Damien. Not anyone. His voice cracked on the last part, but he quickly recovered. You're worth more than the life he's offering, and you know it. She stared at him, her heart aching. She wanted to believe him. She really did. I know. But Aiden, what if this is the only way I'll ever get what I want? What if I'm just too tired of being stuck in this place? Aiden's face softened, and he leaned forward, his voice quieter now. Chloe, you're not stuck. You've never been stuck. You've always had more strength than you give yourself credit for. Chloe's lips trembled as she fought the emotions rising in her throat. She wanted to break down, tell him everything, admit to herself how scared she was of what Damien represented. How much she feared that one decision could ruin everything she'd fought for. I'm scared, she whispered, more to herself than to Aiden. What if I can't make it without him? What if I fail again? Aiden reached out, gently placing his hand over hers. You won't fail. You have me. You have your art. You have your heart. And that's worth more than anything Damien could offer you. Chloe's breath hitched. She wanted to believe him. She had to believe him. But Damien's words echoed in her mind like a siren song. One night. Think about it. The message buzzed again, this time more insistent. Chloe's phone screen lit up with another message from Damien. I'm waiting for your answer, Chloe. Time is running out. The tension in her chest tightened. Her finger hovered over the screen, poised to respond. She wanted to tell him no, to shut him out and forget about everything. But her thumb didn't move. Instead, she closed her eyes, taking a deep breath. Aiden's voice broke through the silence again. I know it's hard, but you can't let him control you. You can't let him define who you are. And for the first time since receiving the offer, Chloe felt something inside her begin to shift. The fear wasn't gone, but the weight of Damien's control seemed a little lighter. Maybe she didn't have to make this decision alone. Maybe, just maybe, there was another way. Chloe glanced down at her phone. She could feel Aiden's eyes on her, waiting for her to make the call. The world outside seemed so far away, but the decision she had to make was right in front of her. One text, one answer. Could she stand her ground and walk away? Or would she give in to the temptation that promised to change everything? Chloe took a deep breath, her finger finally moving toward the screen. She had to make a choice. But was she strong enough to do what was right, even if it meant losing everything? Chloe stood there for what felt like an eternity, her thumb hovering over the screen. The weight of the moment pressed down on her chest, every heartbeat louder than the last. She could feel Aiden's presence beside her, a quiet, steady reminder of everything she stood for, everything she had built for herself. But the temptation of what Damien was offering was a siren call she couldn't ignore. One night, he had said. One night, and everything would change. The thought made her stomach churn, her fingers trembling. Finally, with a deep breath, she pressed send. Her message to Damien was simple, direct. I'll meet you. As soon as the words were out of her mouth, Chloe felt a wave of nausea wash over her. She had just opened the door to a world she wasn't sure she could walk out of. There was no turning back now. Aiden's hand tightened on hers, but he didn't speak. He didn't need to. His eyes said everything. Disappointment, worry, and a silent plea for her to reconsider. Chloe couldn't look at him, couldn't face the doubt in his gaze. She had made the choice, and now she had to live with it. Damien's response was immediate, like he had been waiting for her answer. His words cold but pleased. I'll have my driver pick you up at 7 p.m. sharp. Be ready. She nodded quietly to herself, then set her phone down on the coffee table, the finality of the message sinking in. Aiden stood up slowly, his face a mask of concern. I don't know what he's promised you, Chloe, but I can't just sit back and watch you walk into his world. I won't. His voice was thick with emotion now. Please, don't do this. Chloe turned toward him, finally meeting his eyes. Her throat tightened as she spoke. I don't know how to get what I want without it, Aiden. You don't understand. I understand more than you think, Aiden replied, his voice softening. I know you're tired, and I know you want to believe that this is the way out. But it's not. The price will be too high, Chloe. I promise you. She swallowed hard, feeling the lump form in her throat. She wanted to argue, to explain why this felt like the only option, but she couldn't find the words. Aiden took a step closer, lowering his voice, almost as if speaking to himself. I've seen men like him before. They'll offer you the world, but it's never what it seems. It's all just a game to them. Chloe turned away from him, her mind racing with his words. She wanted to be strong, to reject everything Damien represented. But the promise of a better life, the escape from her constant struggle, it was so tempting. And it wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about everything Damien said he could give her. Her fingers clenched at her sides. She felt trapped, torn between the world she had worked so hard to build and the darkness Damien was offering her. One night, one choice. She had made it. But as the door to the penthouse loomed before her, she couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to unravel. At exactly 7 p.m., a sleek black car pulled up in front of her apartment. Chloe glanced at herself in the mirror one last time. She looked different somehow, changed. Was this the person she was about to become? Her phone buzzed again with a message from Damien. "I'm waiting." The finality of it hit her. She was about to step into a world she could never leave behind. But was she ready for the consequences? Chloe stood frozen in front of the mirror, her reflection staring back at her. A woman on the verge of becoming someone she barely recognized. The dress she wore felt like armor, sleek and dark, an attempt to hide the uncertainty swirling inside her. She barely recognized herself in it, her face pale, her eyes clouded with confusion. One night. The words echoed in her mind like a drumbeat, growing louder with each passing second. She glanced at her phone again. Damien's message. A simple request for her arrival was all she had been waiting for. "I'm waiting." She closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and let it out slowly, trying to calm the storm inside her. She had fought for this moment, for her art, for a chance at something more than the endless struggle of scraping by. But what was it worth if it meant sacrificing everything she believed in? A small voice inside her screamed to stop, to turn away, to send a message to Aiden and tell him she'd made a mistake. But another voice, the one that had kept her up for the last few days, whispered that this was her chance, her only chance. The choice felt like a noose tightening around her neck, the weight of it pulling her down. Chloe grabbed her phone, typed a quick message to Aiden. "I'm going. Please don't be mad." She pressed send before she could second-guess herself. The car outside honked, impatient, a reminder that time was running out. She slipped her phone into her purse, picked up her coat, and left her apartment with a heavy heart and a mind full of chaos. The streets of New York blurred around her as she sat in the back of the sleek black car. The soft hum of the engine and the sound of traffic outside did little to drown out the thoughts racing through her head. What was she doing? What had she just agreed to? Her hands clenched and unclenched in her lap as the car sped through the city, the skyscrapers looming above her like silent giants. She barely noticed the passing landmarks, Times Square, Central Park. Everything felt distant, as if she were watching the world through a fogged window. When the car finally pulled up in front of a high-rise building she'd only seen in magazines, her stomach churned with a mixture of fear and anticipation. The driver stepped out before her, opening the door with a polite smile that only deepened her sense of unease. "Here you are, Miss Bennett," he said, and Chloe nodded numbly, stepping out into the cold night air. The building towered above her, its glass walls reflecting the city's lights like a mirror. It seemed to beckon her in, a fortress of wealth and power. But as she stepped toward the entrance, the gravity of what she was about to do hit her harder than ever. This was it. Inside, the lobby was as opulent as the rest of the building, with marble floors and walls lined with expensive artwork. The air smelled of leather and wood, a subtle hint of expensive cologne lingering in the atmosphere. Chloe felt out of place, a small fish in an ocean of excess. A doorman greeted her with a polite smile, his uniform crisp and flawless. "Mr. Hawke is expecting you, Miss Bennett. Please, follow me." She followed him in silence, the sound of her heels clicking on the marble floor the only noise. Each step felt heavier than the last, and when they reached the elevator, the doors opened without a word. Inside, the elevator was just as lavish, with gold detailing and plush carpeting that almost seemed too soft to be real. As the elevator ascended, Chloe's heart pounded in her chest, each floor they passed taking her closer to a decision she wasn't sure she could undo. The elevator stopped with a soft chime, and the doors slid open to reveal a long, dimly lit hallway. At the end of the hall stood an open door, light spilling out into the darkness. The doorman stepped aside, giving her a courteous nod. "Mr. Hawke is inside." Chloe swallowed hard and stepped forward, her legs shaky, her mind swirling with doubt. As she crossed the threshold into the penthouse, her eyes were immediately drawn to the sprawling space before her, floor-to-ceiling windows offering a breathtaking view of the city below, its lights twinkling like stars in the distance. The place was immaculate, everything sleek and modern, from the polished wood floors to the minimalist furniture. But Damien was standing by the window, his back to her, his silhouette framed by the view of the city. The moment she stepped inside, he turned, a slow, predatory smile curling on his lips. "You came." His voice was like velvet, smooth and unyielding. He looked the same as he had at the gala, charismatic, confident, commanding. But now, there was something else in his gaze, something darker that made Chloe's stomach twist. "I had no choice," she said quietly, her voice betraying the nerves she was trying so desperately to hide. He stepped toward her slowly, his eyes never leaving hers, like he was sizing her up, gauging her every reaction. "No one is ever forced to do anything, Chloe. You're here because you want to be." His words settled in her chest, heavy and undeniable. She didn't want to admit it, but he was right. She had made the choice. She could still walk away, but something deep inside her kept her frozen in place. Damien took another step closer, his presence overwhelming. "I told you," he murmured, his voice low. "I don't just want your body. I want your heart." Chloe's breath caught. There it was, the offer that had been lingering between them, the reason she'd come. But it wasn't just about sex, not for him. He wanted something more, something she didn't know if she could give him. Damien's hand reached out, gently brushing her cheek. Chloe's heart skipped a beat, her body reacting before her mind could process what was happening. He was close now, too close, and she could feel the heat of his body, the tension that hung in the air between them. "Tell me you feel it too, Chloe," he whispered, his voice hushed but insistent. "Tell me you're not just here for the money." Chloe closed her eyes, her mind racing. Could she really give him what he wanted? Or was she already too far gone? Chloe's heart thudded in her chest, each beat seeming to echo louder than the last. She stood motionless, caught between the man before her and the decisions she'd made. Damien's fingers lingered at her cheek, his touch surprisingly gentle, almost tender. But it wasn't the touch she feared. It was what came after, the weight of the decision she had already made. "Tell me you feel it too, Chloe," he whispered, his voice so close it made her skin tingle. The question hung in the air like a dare, challenging her to admit something she wasn't ready to confront. "Tell me you're not just here for the money." She swallowed, her throat tight. Part of her wanted to deny it, to say no and walk away from this, walk away from him. But the truth lingered on the edge of her thoughts like a ghost she couldn't shake. She was here for the money. She had come because it was the only lifeline she had, the only way out. But was there more to it? Was there something else, something she couldn't name, that kept her rooted in place? "I'm not sure," she said softly, barely able to hear her own voice. The admission felt like an unraveling, like she was giving away pieces of herself with every word. Damien's smile widened, but there was no warmth in it. It was as if he knew something she didn't, a truth she wasn't ready to face. He stepped back, his eyes never leaving hers. "I think you are, Chloe." His voice was low, confident, a man who knew exactly what he wanted. "But we'll find out, won't we?" Chloe's breath caught in her throat as he took a step toward her again. She wanted to move, to take a step back, but her feet felt rooted to the floor. His presence was overwhelming, pressing in on her, making everything feel heavy. The room felt smaller now, the air thicker, as though the walls themselves were closing in on her. Every moment felt suspended, the weight of it pressing down on her chest. Damien reached out, gently lifting her chin with his fingers, forcing her to look him in the eye. There was a hardness in his gaze now, an edge that hadn't been there before. He wasn't just playing a game anymore. He was in control, and he knew it. "I don't need you to be sure, Chloe. I just need you to be here, His words were cold, calculated. There was no tenderness in them, no invitation to stay. It was a command, wrapped in the guise of an offer. She tried to take a breath, to steady herself, but it felt impossible. He was too close, his power too overwhelming. "What do you want from me?" she asked, her voice trembling. Damien's lips curled into a smile again, this one slower, more deliberate. "I told you, I want your heart, and I'll take it, Chloe, whether you give it willingly or not." The words sent a chill down her spine, but a part of her couldn't help but wonder if that was what she'd come here for. Was it really just about the money, or was it something deeper, something more dangerous? Damien's hand slid down her arm, his fingers brushing lightly over her skin, sending a jolt of electricity through her. She pulled in a shaky breath, her pulse quickening. The heat in the room seemed to rise, matching the heat coursing through her veins. "Don't be afraid," he murmured, as if reading her thoughts. "You don't have to be. You're exactly where you're meant to be." Chloe's mind raced. She could feel the pull of his words, the weight of his presence. It was as though she was caught in a current she couldn't escape. "I didn't come here for this," she whispered, but even she wasn't sure if she believed it. Damien's gaze softened for a moment, but only briefly. He stepped back, giving her space, but the distance felt insignificant. "But you're here now," he said, his tone final, "and you'll be exactly where I need you." The room seemed to shift around her, as if reality itself were bending under the force of the moment. Chloe felt a sense of helplessness, like she was standing at the edge of a precipice, unsure whether to jump or turn back. The consequences of her choice stretched out before her like a dark abyss, and she had no idea how far down it went. For the first time since she'd arrived, Chloe realized just how deeply she had already fallen into this game. Damien wasn't just a man offering her an escape from her life. He was a force she couldn't control, a storm she hadn't prepared for. And yet, a part of her couldn't deny the attraction. The way his presence made her feel like she was someone important, someone worthy. For all the darkness surrounding him, there was a flicker of something else, something that made her believe this wasn't just about manipulation. Maybe, just maybe, he saw something in her that no one else had. The tension in the room grew, the silence heavy with unspoken promises. Chloe's heart raced, torn between the fear of what she was about to do and the undeniable pull of Damien's world. One night. It was all she had left. And yet, it felt like the beginning of something much larger, something she couldn't escape. Damien stepped toward her once again, his eyes searching hers as though he were looking for something she didn't know how to give. "Are you ready, Chloe?" His voice was low, commanding, but there was a hint of anticipation, of something darker and more dangerous than she could have anticipated. Chloe didn't know how to answer. She didn't know if she could. But when she looked at him, she realized she had already made her choice. The question now wasn't whether she would go through with it. It was how far she was willing to let him take her. Chloe's pulse raced as Damien stepped closer, his presence swallowing the space between them. The weight of his gaze felt like a physical force, and despite the cold air in the room, she felt a heat rising from within her, an undeniable attraction, coupled with the deep-seated fear of what was to come. The way he looked at her, the way he seemed to see through her, she couldn't decide if it was exhilarating or terrifying. Damien's fingers brushed a strand of hair from her face, tucking it behind her ear with a gentleness that seemed at odds with the tension crackling in the air. "You're so much more than you give yourself credit for, Chloe," he murmured, his voice low, almost affectionate. "Don't you see? You've always had everything I've wanted." Chloe's heart skipped a beat at the intensity in his words. She had been fighting this, the idea that she might be more than just another pawn in his game. But now, in this moment, she wasn't sure anymore. "I don't want to be just another conquest, Damien," she whispered, her voice shaky, barely audible. He smiled, a smile that was part amusement, part something darker. "You think I see you that way?" His voice dropped, the warmth vanishing in an instant. "I don't want just your body, Chloe. I told you that. I want your heart." There was a strange sincerity in his words, but Chloe wasn't sure if she could trust it. Damien was a man of power and manipulation. Could anyone really be what they claimed to be, in a world where everything had a price? Chloe's breath caught in her throat as he stepped back, his eyes scanning her from head to toe, as though he were measuring her worth, her vulnerability, her every move. She felt exposed, like he could see the layers she had worked so hard to keep hidden. He extended his hand to her, and for a moment, she hesitated. She looked down at his outstretched palm, the distance between them closing with the offer. One night, Chloe. One choice. His voice was quiet, but firm, a plea for her surrender. And in that moment, Chloe understood. She wasn't just stepping into a luxurious world of riches and luxury. She was entering a game where the stakes were higher than anything she had ever known. There was no turning back from this. But still, the question lingered in her mind. What would she be willing to sacrifice? Without thinking, without fully understanding why, Chloe placed her hand in his. The contact was electric, a jolt that seemed to reach down to her very core. She hadn't realized how much she wanted to be touched, to be seen, until that moment. The uncertainty, the fear, the guilt, all of it vanished the instant their hands met. In that moment, she felt like she was finally being recognized, not just for what she could do, but for who she was. Flawed, vulnerable, but alive. Damien's fingers tightened around hers as he led her toward the heart of the penthouse, and Chloe couldn't help but feel like she was walking into the lion's den. The suite was nothing short of magnificent, every surface polished, every corner reflecting the wealth Damien had accumulated. The walls were lined with priceless art, the floors covered with rugs so soft Chloe almost felt guilty stepping on them. It was a world of indulgence, of excess, and it was all waiting for her. But none of it mattered. Not really. All that mattered was the man beside her, the man whose hold on her had only grown stronger with every passing moment. He led her to a plush sitting area near the window, the city lights twinkling below. There, he paused, turning toward her with a look that was almost predatory in its intensity. Chloe's heart skipped a beat. "I know what you're thinking," Damien said, his voice barely above a whisper. "You're wondering what happens now. But I've been clear, Chloe. What I want from you is more than just what you've been offering. It's not just a night. It's everything you are." The words hung in the air, heavy and loaded with meaning. Chloe didn't know what to say. She wasn't sure she even had the words anymore. All she knew was that something inside her, a flicker of doubt, maybe even guilt, was being replaced with a fierce, undeniable desire. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to trust that his intentions weren't purely selfish. But the price of that trust, what would it cost her? Damien stepped closer, closing the gap between them until there was barely any space left. "Tell me, Chloe," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "Can you really walk away from this? Can you walk away from me?" Chloe's breath hitched. The question hung in the air like a challenge, daring her to defy him. She didn't know how to answer. Was she ready to walk away? Was she ready to leave behind everything? Everything Damien represented? Everything he could give her? Her pulse raced, the decision gnawing at her from the inside. Chloe's mind spun, caught between the intensity of Damien's gaze and the overwhelming pull of his presence. The question he had asked her lingered in the space between them, hanging like a thick fog. Could she walk away from this? Could she truly turn her back on everything he had offered, on the life she had always dreamed of? Damien's eyes searched hers with an intensity that seemed to strip away everything she had built, everything she had known. For a brief moment, Chloe wondered if he could see right through her, if he knew how much she longed for what he was offering, how much she craved the freedom from the suffocating weight of her life. But still, she couldn't help the voice inside her that screamed for caution. Was it worth it? She had always prided herself on her independence, on her ability to make her own way, to find her own success. But here, in Damien's world of wealth and power, she was a small fish in a vast, endless ocean. And the current was pulling her deeper than she had ever anticipated. Damien reached out, his hand gently cupping her cheek, and Chloe's heart skipped a beat. His touch was softer now, almost tender, as if he were trying to coax something out of her, something he had already claimed, something he believed was his for the taking. You don't have to be afraid, Chloe, he said, his voice a low murmur, smooth and luring. I'm not here to break you. I'm here to offer you everything you deserve. She could feel the weight of his words pressing against her, a strange comfort mixed with a sense of danger. Her skin prickled at his touch, and for a fleeting moment, she let herself believe him. But deep inside, Chloe knew there was more to this. She wasn't just some prize to be won. And yet, here she was, standing on the edge of everything she had ever known, ready to step into a world that could either lift her up or consume her whole. Damien's fingers brushed her jawline, his touch soft, but deliberate. Tell me, Chloe. Tell me you don't feel it too. Tell me this isn't more than just a night for you. Tell me you don't want more from me. Chloe's breath caught in her throat. His words, his touch, his presence, they were all so overwhelming. She felt the war inside her intensify. Part of her wanted to scream no, to push him away and run as fast as she could. But another part, the part that had been buried for so long, wanted to lean into him, to take what he was offering without looking back. I don't know what I want, she whispered, her voice barely audible, the words laced with confusion and longing. I don't know if I can trust you. Damien's eyes softened for the briefest moment, the hardness in them flickering like a dying flame. He stepped back slightly, giving her space she didn't realize she needed until it was there. Trust is a choice, Chloe, he said quietly, his voice no longer cold, but instead surprisingly vulnerable. But it's one I'm willing to earn. For a moment, Chloe saw something else in him, a crack in the armor, a glimpse of the man behind the persona. She wasn't sure what it meant, or if it was just another manipulation, but she couldn't deny the small flicker of hope it sparked inside her. The silence stretched between them, thick with unspoken thoughts. Chloe stared at him, her mind a tangled mess of desire and fear, of hope and doubt. Her heart was torn in two, one part wanting to believe that Damien could be the answer to everything she had been searching for, and the other part warning her to run before it was too late. Damien watched her, his gaze unwavering, as if he were waiting for something, waiting for her to make the next move, to give him the answer he craved. You're still unsure, aren't you? He asked, his voice calm but with an edge of something deeper beneath it. That's okay, but know this, Chloe. The more you resist, the harder it will be to walk away from me once you step into my world. The words hit her like a blow. Chloe felt a sharp pang in her chest, as if something inside her had just broken. She was already in too deep. Suddenly, her phone buzzed again, the familiar notification tone cutting through the tension. Her hand reached for it instinctively, almost as though it was the only thing keeping her grounded. But when she looked down at the screen, her heart froze. It was a message from Aiden. I don't trust him, Chloe. Please don't do this. You're worth more than this life. Don't let him take you. Please. The message hit her like a punch in the gut, the weight of Aiden's concern crashing down on her. She had always trusted him, always known that his loyalty was unshakable. But now, in this moment, her mind was pulled in two opposite directions, one toward the man she was standing beside, and one toward the best friend who had always been there for her. Chloe stood frozen, her phone in her hand, her heart pounding. Damien watched her closely, waiting for her decision. You're at a crossroads, Chloe, he murmured, stepping closer again, his voice now a whisper. What will you choose? Will you walk away, or will you stay? Her breath caught in her throat as the weight of his question sank in. This was it, the moment that would define everything. Would she walk away from Damien, from the life he was offering her? Or would she allow herself to be drawn deeper into the web he had woven? Chloe stood still, her phone gripped tightly in her hand, the weight of Aiden's words pressing down on her. She could feel the pull of both worlds, Aiden's world of loyalty, trust, and unconditional support, and Damien's world of power, allure, and temptation. Her heart beat loudly in her ears, drowning out everything else, as if demanding an answer. You're at a crossroads, Chloe. Damien's words echoed in her mind, his voice calm yet filled with an undeniable certainty. The room seemed to grow smaller around her, the air thicker, as if the very walls were closing in, urging her to make a choice. Chloe's fingers tightened around the phone. "Please don't do this." Aiden's message continued to burn into her consciousness. She could hear his voice in her head, the worry, the pleading. She had always trusted him, trusted his judgment, his love, his care. But now, standing in Damien's world, she felt something she had never felt before. She wasn't sure if it was the thrill of the unknown, or the way Damien made her feel seen in a way she had never experienced. But as much as she wanted to deny it, part of her wanted to surrender, to take the path he was offering her. Damien took a step closer, his eyes never leaving hers, and suddenly the distance between them felt unbearable. The air hummed with the weight of his presence, drawing her in. He was offering her more than she had ever dreamed of. "You still haven't answered me, Chloe." His voice was softer now, almost coaxing, as if he understood the turmoil raging inside her. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came. Everything felt so heavy. Her heart, her mind, her entire being, all of it was in turmoil. Torn between the man who had opened the door to a new life and the life she had fought so hard to build for herself. Her eyes flicked down to the phone again. "Don't let him take you." The words from Aiden burned into her. He was right. She was worth more than this, more than whatever Damien could offer her. "You can still walk away," Damien said, almost as if reading her thoughts. His voice was gentle now, but the underlying challenge was unmistakable. "But you'll never be the same after this moment. You'll always wonder what could have been. You'll always wonder if you could have had it all, Chloe." Chloe's heart raced, the temptation of his words pulling her in. She wanted to fight it, to reject him, to push him away. But there was a part of her that was captivated, drawn to the promise of something more than what she had ever known. Chloe took a deep breath, steadying herself. She knew what she had to do. She had always known. This wasn't just about a man offering her a night of indulgence. It was about something deeper, something more fundamental. It was about purity, her soul, her heart, her independence. And she wasn't sure if she was ready to give that up. Her hand trembled as she placed her phone down on the table beside her. The choice was clear now. It wasn't just about Damien or Aiden. It was about who she was, who she wanted to be. She couldn't let someone else define her. Damien watched her closely, sensing the shift. "You still have time, Chloe," he said, but his voice had lost some of its intensity, a hint of something darker creeping in. "But don't make the mistake of thinking this offer will always be on the table. The choice is yours. But once you walk away, it's gone. Forever." She stood, taking one last look at him. There was something magnetic about Damien, something dangerous, but also incredibly compelling. But there was more to her than just the allure of his power. She had her own strength, her own choices to make. "I'm not like you," Chloe said, her voice quiet but firm. "I'm not just a game to be played." Her words hung in the air, the finality of them settling between them like a wall. For a moment, Damien said nothing. He simply watched her, as if weighing her resolve. Then, slowly, he stepped back, his expression unreadable. "I see," he said quietly, his tone almost regretful. "You think you can walk away. But be careful, Chloe. The world you think you're leaving behind will come for you. And when it does, you'll wish you had made a different choice." Chloe didn't respond. She simply turned and walked toward the door, her heart heavy with the weight of her decision. As she reached for the handle, she glanced back at Damien one last time. His expression had shifted, a subtle flicker of something, maybe disappointment, maybe anger, passing through his eyes. But Chloe didn't wait for him to speak again. She didn't need to. The decision had been made. The door closed behind her with a soft click, and as Chloe stepped into the elevator, she felt the gravity of the moment settle over her. She had walked away from Damien, from everything he had promised her. But as the elevator descended, she couldn't help but wonder if she had made the right choice. The future ahead of her felt uncertain. But one thing was clear. She wasn't going to be anyone's pawn. She would carve her own path, no matter how difficult it might be. As the elevator doors slid open to the ground floor, Chloe's phone buzzed again. She glanced at the screen, her heart skipping a beat. It was a message from Damien. "You've made a mistake, Chloe, and you'll regret it. But I'll give you one last chance. Come back, and everything will be yours." Her finger hovered over the screen, uncertainty flooding her once more. Was she truly free? Or had she just opened the door to something far worse? Chloe's heart pounded as she stared at Damien's message. "You've made a mistake, Chloe, and you'll regret it. But I'll give you one last chance. Come back, and everything will be yours." For a moment, time seemed to stop. Her finger hovered over the screen, torn between responding or simply throwing the phone into the abyss of the city below. The weight of the decision pressed in on her. One final chance. Could she really go back? But Chloe knew deep down, something had shifted. She wasn't the same person who had walked into that penthouse a few hours ago. She had faced Damien's world, stared down the darkness he represented, and walked away. That was worth something. She had made a choice for herself, a choice that made her feel whole again. Still, the fear gnawed at her. What if walking away had been a mistake? What if, by rejecting him, she had lost the one opportunity that could change everything? She threw her phone onto the couch, unwilling to look at it any longer. But that decision, that final message, followed her every step as she walked around her apartment. She was free, yes. But now she was left to figure out what to do with that freedom. The days that followed were a blur. She worked on her art, went to her usual coffee shop, but nothing felt the same. She could still feel Damien's presence in her mind, his words echoing in the back of her mind like a song she couldn't forget. Then came the whispers, the news. It all hit her like a tidal wave one morning when she opened her inbox. An email from an anonymous source. "Damien Hawk is not who he seems. His empire is built on manipulation and destruction. Be careful, Chloe. He never lets anyone go." Chloe's breath caught in her throat. She opened the email, every word sinking in deeper with each sentence. She scrolled down to the attached documents, images of business deals, shady transactions, and notes about people who had disappeared, all tied back to Damien. This wasn't just about the billionaire's charm. It was about his empire, built on lies and cruelty. And she had almost walked right into it. The betrayal stung more than she expected. She had thought Damien's world was one of power and control, but now she saw it for what it truly was, corrupt and dangerous. He had been playing a game all along, and she had almost been his pawn. Chloe sat down at her desk, the weight of the information pressing down on her like 1,000 pounds. She felt numb, a sharp contrast to the storm of emotions she had felt just days before. She couldn't turn away from this, not now. She had to do something. "I won't let him destroy anyone else," Chloe whispered to herself, determination settling in. She would expose Damien for what he was. No more hiding, no more running. She pulled out her phone and sent the message to Aiden. "You were right. He's worse than I thought. I need your help." Her fingers shook as she hit send. It was time to confront the truth, to tear down the mask that Damien had worn for so long. The next few days were a blur of phone calls, meetings with Aiden, and a growing sense of urgency. Chloe had gathered everything she could. Documents, photos, testimonies from people who had crossed Damien's path and never walked away unscathed. She was building a case, but it wasn't going to be easy. Damien's reach was vast, and his power stretched farther than Chloe had realized. Aiden had been her rock through it all, his determination matching hers. They worked together, tirelessly, piecing together the puzzle of Damien's empire. And the deeper they dug, the more horrifying the truth became. Damien had orchestrated it all, ruining lives, destroying careers, and using people for his own gain. He wasn't just a businessman. He was a master manipulator, pulling strings from behind the scenes. Chloe's hands trembled as she looked at the growing pile of evidence in front of her. It was time. Chloe couldn't hide from it anymore. The final step was inevitable. Exposing Damien to the world, to the people he had hurt, to everyone he had deceived. But as she sat down with Aiden to finalize the plan, the phone rang. The caller ID made her stomach drop. It was Damien. "I warned you, Chloe." His voice came through, calm and cold. "You made a mistake by walking away, and now you've sealed your fate." Chloe's pulse quickened, but she held her ground, her voice steady. "What are you going to do, Damien? Destroy me? I've already seen who you really are. I won't be your victim anymore. There was a pause on the other end of the line, and for a brief moment, Chloe thought he might back down. But then his voice came through, even colder than before. You think you can walk away from me? You think you've won? Think again, Chloe. This isn't over. The call ended abruptly, and Chloe's hands shook as she looked at Aiden. He could see the fear in her eyes, the way her entire body seemed to tighten, as if bracing for something she couldn't control. He knows what we're doing, she whispered, her voice trembling. He's not going to let me go. I thought I could expose him, but now I realize he's going to come after me, after both of us. Aiden looked at her, his jaw tight with resolve. Then we do this together. We fight back. Chloe nodded slowly. She had made her choice, and there was no going back now. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for everyone Damien had ever hurt, everyone he had manipulated. And for the first time, Chloe felt the weight of her own power, the power to change the course of her life, to stop Damien from continuing his reign of manipulation and deceit. But the game was far from over. Damien wasn't going to back down easily. As Chloe and Aiden finalized the plan to bring Damien down, another message flashed on her phone. This time, it was an encrypted message. No name, no trace of who sent it. He's coming for you. The clock is ticking. Chloe's heart stopped. She looked at Aiden, her mind racing. This was no longer just about exposing Damien. It was about surviving him. The final battle was just beginning. Chloe didn't sleep that night. The city outside her window seemed to pulse with life, but inside her apartment, time seemed to stretch, every second heavier than the last. Her phone lay on the coffee table, buzzing intermittently with messages she dared not read. The weight of what she was about to do hung over her, and she could feel the tension building in the pit of her stomach. This wasn't just about exposing Damien anymore. It was about surviving him. He's coming for you. The anonymous message still echoed in her mind. Every door, every window, every shadow seemed to hide something darker. Damien's reach was vast. He didn't just own companies, he owned people. And now, Chloe had become one of those people he was willing to destroy to keep his secrets safe. Her phone buzzed again, and this time, she couldn't ignore it. It was Aiden. We need to move fast, he texted. Damien's too dangerous to let slip through our fingers. Have you finalized everything? Chloe stared at the text, her fingers trembling as she typed back. Yes, it's all in place. But I'm scared, Aiden. I don't know if we can stop him. A few moments passed before he replied, and when the text came through, it was simple, direct, and filled with the kind of resolve she needed. You're not alone in this. We'll face him together. It's now or never. Chloe closed her eyes, taking a deep breath. The moment of truth had arrived. She couldn't back out now, not after everything she had uncovered. This fight wasn't just about exposing Damien. It was about reclaiming her own life, taking back the power he had stolen from her, and from others like her. Later that day, Chloe met with Aiden in a quiet cafe tucked away in the corner of the city. It felt like the calm before the storm, but she knew better. There was no calm. Not anymore. They were finalizing the details of the plan, everything she had gathered over the last few days. The files, the emails, the accounts of those who had been destroyed by Damien's empire. It was all there, damning evidence that could tear him apart if they played their cards right. But Chloe knew it wasn't going to be easy. Damien had people in high places, and if he suspected that someone was after him, he wouldn't hesitate to fight back. He didn't care about consequences. He cared about power. This is it, Aiden, Chloe said, her voice quiet but filled with determination. If we go through with this, there's no going back. Once the world knows what he's done, he'll come for us. For me. Aiden nodded, his expression firm. I know, but you've already made it this far. We can't back down now. This is bigger than us. This is about everyone he's hurt. Chloe took a deep breath, feeling the weight of his words. She had been playing a dangerous game for too long, but now, she was ready to take it to the next level. She couldn't let him win, not after everything he had done. She pulled out her phone and checked the files one last time. Everything was in order. The documents were ready to go. The plan was set. All she had to do now was hit send. Her finger hovered over the screen. She was about to expose the man who had almost destroyed her, the man who had manipulated her, lied to her, used her for his own gain. But there was still something inside her that hesitated. Could she really do this? Could she destroy the empire Damien had spent years building? As if on cue, her phone buzzed again. The sudden vibration shattered her concentration, and Chloe's heart skipped a beat. She glanced at the screen. It was a message from Damien. "You can't run from this, Chloe. I gave you everything you ever wanted. You're making a mistake." The words sent a shiver down her spine, but she didn't flinch. Damien was trying to control her once again, trying to reel her back in with promises of everything she could ever desire. But Chloe was no longer that naive woman who had walked into his penthouse all those days ago. She had seen the truth. She had seen the monster beneath the polished exterior. "I'm not running from you anymore, Damien," she typed back, her fingers steady now. "This ends tonight." She hit send before she could second-guess herself. The phone buzzed once more, but Chloe didn't bother to check it. She had made her decision. That evening, Chloe and Aiden stood in front of the courtroom doors. The tension between them was palpable, but there was no turning back now. They had crossed the point of no return. The files, the evidence, everything was in place. The press had been tipped off, and soon the world would know what Damien Hawk had done. As they walked inside, Chloe felt a rush of adrenaline flood her body. This was it, the moment she had been waiting for. The fight for her life had finally reached its climax. The courtroom was packed, the air heavy with anticipation. Reporters filled the back, cameras flashing as they waited for the proceedings to begin. Chloe's heart raced in her chest. But she held her head high. This was her moment. The world would finally see the truth. As the judge called the court to order, Chloe caught sight of Damien sitting at the other table, his cold eyes locking onto hers. He didn't flinch, didn't show a hint of fear. He sat there, the picture of calm, as if he had nothing to lose. But Chloe wasn't scared anymore. This wasn't just about her. This was about exposing him, about taking back everything he had stolen. She was ready. As the court proceedings began, Chloe glanced at Aiden, who gave her a reassuring nod. She wasn't alone. Not anymore. And as the judge called the first witness to the stand, Chloe felt a wave of determination wash over her. She wasn't going to let him win. Not this time. The fight was on. The courtroom buzzed with the quiet hum of anticipation as the trial began. Chloe sat in the witness stand, her hands trembling slightly in her lap. She had come this far, but the weight of the moment still pressed on her chest. She had prepared for this, but nothing could fully prepare her for the gravity of facing Damien across the room, his eyes cold and calculating as they locked onto hers. Damien sat at his table, his lawyer beside him, an intimidating figure with sharp features and a quiet confidence that sent a chill down Chloe's spine. He looked so calm, so poised, as though this was just another one of his games. But Chloe knew better now. She knew the truth. She had seen it all. The judge's gavel struck, silencing the room, and the proceedings officially began. Chloe took a deep breath, steadying herself as the first witness stepped up to the stand. A former employee of Damien's, a man who had been fired after raising concerns about Damien's business practices. The man's testimony was damning, revealing how Damien had manipulated employees, concealed profits, and exploited people for his own gain. As the man spoke, Chloe felt her heart begin to race. This was it. This was the moment they had been building towards. With every word that passed the witness's lips, she felt the foundation of Damien's empire begin to crack. The lies, the deceit, the corruption. It was all coming out, piece by piece. And Chloe, the woman who had almost been his pawn, was the one who had set it all in motion. Damien's lawyer, a tall, sharp-eyed woman named Grace Sullivan, stood up and began cross-examining the witness. Chloe couldn't help but feel the tension in the room as the lawyer's piercing gaze swept over the courtroom. She had the kind of presence that made even the most seasoned witnesses falter. Grace's voice was smooth, practiced, as she tore into the witness's credibility. "You claim to be a whistleblower, but you have a history of poor performance at my client's company. Can we really trust someone who's been let go for multiple reasons, including dishonesty and negligence? Her words hit hard, planting seeds of doubt in the jury's mind. Chloe's stomach tightened, but she held her ground. This was always going to be part of the fight, the manipulation, the spinning of truth into lies. But Chloe had the truth on her side. She had the evidence. When it was Chloe's turn to take the stand, the weight of the room seemed to crush her. She could feel every eye on her, the room still and silent as she stepped forward. The gavel fell again, signaling the start of her testimony. Damien's gaze was fixed on her, his eyes narrowed, as if daring her to slip up. He knew her. He knew her weaknesses. But Chloe wasn't the woman she had been when she first stepped into his world. She had changed. She had found her strength, even if it had taken losing everything to realize it. The prosecutor stood up, asking Chloe to recount her relationship with Damien, how she had been drawn into his world and manipulated into making dangerous choices. She spoke with clarity and conviction, detailing how Damien had used her vulnerability against her, how he had dangled promises of wealth and power to control her. As she spoke, Chloe could see the jury reacting. Their faces were a mixture of disbelief and shock. For the first time, she felt the power of her own voice, the weight of her words landing where they needed to. Chloe was midway through her testimony when Grace Sullivan stood up again. The sharp-tongued lawyer wasted no time, attacking Chloe's character and credibility. "Ms. Bennett, isn't it true that you've been financially struggling for years?" Grace asked, her voice dripping with disdain. "That you've been looking for a way out of your problems? Isn't that what really brought you to Mr. Hawk? You knew he had power, and you wanted to take advantage of it." Chloe felt the sting of the words, but she didn't flinch. She had expected this. Grace's goal was simple: discredit her, make her look desperate and opportunistic. But Chloe wasn't that woman anymore. She knew who she was, and no amount of manipulation would change that. "I came to Damien's world because I believed he could help me. But what I found was a man who preyed on others. He used me just like he's used so many before. And now, I'm taking him down for it." Her voice was steady, unwavering. She wasn't about to let Damien use her again. This time, the truth would win. The rest of the day passed in a blur, testimony after testimony, each one slowly chipping away at Damien's carefully crafted facade. As the day drew to a close, Chloe felt the exhaustion of the fight settle into her bones. But there was a sense of triumph in her heart. She had done it. She had stood her ground, had given everything to make sure Damien's empire would crumble. But she knew the battle wasn't over yet. This was just the beginning. As she left the courtroom that evening, Aiden was waiting for her outside, his face tired but relieved. He wrapped his arms around her in a tight hug, and Chloe allowed herself to lean into him, just for a moment. "You did it," Aiden said, his voice filled with pride. Chloe pulled back, looking up at him. "Not yet, but we're getting closer." And as they walked down the courthouse steps together, Chloe couldn't shake the feeling that they had just stepped into the eye of the storm. Damien was going to come for them. He wouldn't take this defeat lying down. That night, as Chloe sat in her apartment, she received another message. This one wasn't from Damien. It was an unknown number, but the words were clear. "You think you've won? This is just the beginning. There's more at stake than you realize, and I'm coming for you." Chloe's blood ran cold. The message was chilling, its implications clear. They had just exposed Damien's corruption, but now he was coming for them both. Chloe looked at Aiden, who had just entered the room. "He won't stop, will he?" she whispered. Aiden's expression darkened as he looked at her. "No, but neither will we." Chloe had thought the worst was behind her. She had exposed Damien Hawk's empire of corruption, manipulated power, and lies. She had done the unthinkable, fought back, taken control of her own story, and revealed the truth to the world. The legal battle was far from over, but she had become the symbol of defiance, a woman who had faced her darkest fears and survived. But now, with the threat still hanging over her, Chloe knew that the real fight was only just beginning. Damien wasn't going to let this go easily. The message he had sent her was proof of that. He had been watching her every move, and if she thought she was safe, she was sorely mistaken. Chloe stared out the window of her apartment, watching the city lights twinkle below. The world outside seemed calm, peaceful even. But within her, a storm was brewing. Every part of her was on edge, waiting for the next move, the next attack from Damien. Aiden had been her rock through all of this, but even he couldn't shield her from the inevitable confrontation. No matter how hard they fought, no matter how many truths they exposed, Damien would stop at nothing to keep his empire intact. The world he had built was a fortress, and Chloe had cracked it open, exposing the rot within. But now that the walls were crumbling, there was no telling what he would do to save himself. The days dragged on, each one filled with court appearances, news stories, and the constant weight of uncertainty. Damien's legal team had gone on the offensive, attacking Chloe's credibility, spreading lies about her character, and attempting to discredit every piece of evidence she had worked so hard to gather. But Chloe knew better now. She had seen the truth behind Damien's mask, and she wouldn't back down. One afternoon, as Chloe sat in her apartment, reading through the latest news articles, her phone buzzed. The message was from Aiden. She opened it without hesitation. "They're going to come for you. I've gotten word that Damien is preparing something big. He's not just fighting for his empire anymore, Chloe. He's fighting for his freedom." Chloe's stomach twisted into knots. "What do we do?" Aiden's reply was swift. "We keep going. We don't stop. We've come too far to back out now." The message hit her like a ton of bricks. She had been waiting for Damien's next move, but now, with the stakes higher than ever, Chloe felt the weight of everything she had fought for. This wasn't just about her anymore. It wasn't about revenge or exposing a powerful man. It was about survival. Later that evening, the knock on her door came unexpectedly. Chloe's heart stopped as she stood frozen in the entryway, her hand still resting on the doorknob. Her mind raced through the possibilities. Was it Aiden? Was it another message from Damien? She opened the door slowly, her breath caught in her throat. Standing in front of her was Grace Sullivan, Damien's lawyer, the woman who had tried so hard to discredit her in court. But this time, Grace wasn't wearing her usual polished armor. There was no sharpness in her gaze, no coldness in her demeanor. For the first time since Chloe had met her, Grace seemed vulnerable. "Chloe," she said, her voice soft, almost apologetic. "I need to talk to you." Chloe didn't know what to make of it. After everything Grace had done, after how hard she had fought to protect Damien's empire, what could she possibly want now? "I'm listening," Chloe said, her voice cautious but steady. Grace hesitated for a moment before speaking again. "Damien's gone too far. I've seen what he's capable of, and I can't keep helping him." Chloe felt a chill run down her spine. "What do you mean? What's he planning?" Grace stepped inside, glancing around the apartment as if checking to see if anyone was watching. "Damien's not going to let this go. He's making moves to take down anyone who's even remotely connected to this case. I know he's coming after you, Chloe, but he's also coming after me." Chloe's breath caught in her throat. "You're just now telling me this?" Grace nodded, her face grim. "I was blinded by loyalty, by money, by power. But now, I see what he's really capable of. I'm not the same person I was when I first joined him." For a long moment, Chloe said nothing. The silence between them stretched, filled with the weight of everything Grace had just said. And then, slowly, Chloe spoke. "What do you want from me?" Grace's eyes met hers, and for the first time, Chloe saw a glimmer of regret in them. "I want to help you bring him down. I've got information that can take him down for good." Chloe's mind spun with the possibilities. Damien had never expected Grace to turn on him. She had been one of his most loyal followers, someone who had stood by him through every manipulation, every lie. But now, it seemed, the truth had come crashing down on her as well. "How do you expect me to trust you?" Chloe asked, her voice low but not without conviction. Grace seemed to deflate, her shoulders sagging as if the weight of her own guilt had become too much to bear. "You don't have to trust me. But I'm telling you, Chloe, Damien's empire is falling apart. I'm giving you the chance to finish what you started." The days that followed were filled with strategizing, planning, and a growing sense of dread. Grace gave Chloe everything she needed. Documents, files, even recordings. That would be enough to finally bring Damien to his knees. But it wasn't going to be easy. Damien still had people in high places, people who would stop at nothing to protect him. Chloe knew that bringing him down would be a battle unlike any she had ever fought. But with Aiden by her side and Grace now an ally, Chloe felt stronger than ever. She wasn't going to let Damien win. Not this time. As Chloe sat down to review the final pieces of the plan, her phone buzzed again. This time, it was an unknown number. "You think you've won, Chloe?" The message read, "You have no idea what's coming next. You're playing a dangerous game, and in the end, I will make you regret ever crossing me." Her breath caught in her throat as the message sent a chill through her. Damien wasn't done. Not by a long shot. Chloe looked at Aiden, who had just entered the room. He's coming, and this time, he's not alone.